When I spit bars in a rave, man, I go hard like Santan.
Hello and welcome to Touchy Gooners podcast. My name is Lewis and today I'm joined by my usual cast of Daniel, Shabs and Seun. How you doing, guys?
Yo, what's good?
Again.
Good, thanks.
And you know what? 2 weeks in a row we've got a special guest, and this time we've got John Cross joining us. How you doing, John?
Yeah, really good, really good. Really nice to be with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We're actually quite excited to have you on. We've been talking. I've been trying to get you on for a few weeks, but obviously the Premier League is just in full action mode right now. You haven't got a moment's respite with the games coming thick and fast. How's the schedule been treating you? Are you enjoying this new kind of game every day pretty much?
Yeah, I am actually. I'm sure we're all football addicts, aren't we, really? I did my 6th game yesterday since we've been back.
Wow.
So it's been quite an exhausting sort of schedule, really. It's been really good fun. I think it's been incredibly well organised. And yeah, I mean, I think it's gone quite smoothly. Everything is run to military precision. You know, from when you turn up, where you park, temperature checks, forms. You know, everything is done really to precision. I have to say, if you'd asked me 6 weeks ago, I would have had major doubts. I still have a bit of a doubt over sort of kind of the morals of it and what have you. But I just think it's given us all a bit of a lift, hasn't it? And it's done what he's sort of said. How long that novelty will last is another thing, because, you know, I mean, the pandemic has been a global tragedy. And if we get any sort of hint of a second wave, you know, particularly in England with the Premier League, I think it will be difficult to justify it. So don't get me wrong, we're not plain sailing yet. But I think with the protocols and that kind of attention to detail, it feels like, you know, football is in a much better place. And blimey, did we need football to come back? I think we did.
Yeah, I mean, jury's out for Arsenal fans, I guess. Maybe we could have done with the with the lockdown and just going on a little bit longer, because obviously it started in a pretty eventful way for us, I guess.
Yes.
Like lots to talk about with our opening week or so. You know, some positives in the last week or so with 2 wins. But what's the mood been like at Arsenal since lockdown, and how do you think Arteta has dealt with this? Because this is a challenging time for all managers, but you know, especially a manager who's only been in senior football for, you know, 6 months or whatever as a manager.
Yeah, listen, I'll tell you how I see it really with Arteta. I'm a massive Arteta fan. I feel incredibly positive about Mikel Arteta. In that, basically, I do genuinely believe. I know that people sort of question, oh, how do you say that? How do you know that? And, you know, isn't he just Guardiola's assistant? But I think it's beyond that. You know, if you'd speak to people, you know, like I tried to do and tried to get a gauge, I think you basically get a feeling for someone. I think he was an outstanding coach at Manchester City. If you ever speak to him, and kind of done quite a few sort of interviews with him over the years, particularly when he was a player at Arsenal, he spoke so well and he had an authority. I mean, blimey, when he used to, you know, be a senior player at the club, you know, some of the younger players, Mickey Taken, I have to add, basically used to call him coach, and not necessarily in a complimentary way, you know, because he just had that, you know, feeling that he was going to be a manager. And I just think he was making strides and progress. It was a bit hit and miss. I just went as a punter actually to the West Ham game. And, you know, was lucky enough to see that from a really good vantage point. And let's be honest, Arsenal won that game. And I thought, oh, blimey, this is a bit painful. So it wasn't all, you know, plain sailing. But I just thought he was making real inroads despite the Europa League defeat. And then lockdown happens. And I think a lot went wrong, if I'm brutally honest, you know, in that time. The discussion over the pay cuts, the finances, which hit the club hard. And I still don't think a lot of people get how much this is going to hurt football clubs, and even some of the big clubs like Arsenal, Liverpool, and that get Arsenal back. I think it's been a wake-up call. I think it's shown how much there is to do, you know, within the club, and how big a challenge this will be for Arteta. Still feel positive about Arteta. But if I'm brutally honest, I think the club, you know, is facing huge huge problems, huge hurdles, and I sort of tried to sort of this way the other day on the radio show, kind of came up short, but I think in a way the club is going backwards, and that's how I'd kind of couch it. And I do think Arteta is an incredibly intelligent guy, very good coach, very good manager. I think he's already shown his ruthless streak. I'm on board with him. I mean, listen, it's so obvious, isn't it, that he's got to kind of improve that defence. Defensively, it can look an absolute shambles at times, and there's no point in hiding away from that. And I just think that it's going to take time. But I think some of these younger players, I mean, Saka is exciting. Willock's exciting. Let's hope that kind of Reece Nelson can kick on, and maybe Nketiah. And I think the core and the basis of those young players, can give you a real lift, I think. So I think that's a real sense of encouragement. But I think it's going to be a difficult time. And I think, Arsenal fans have got to be patient. But I do genuinely believe they've got the right man in Arteta. I do believe that strongly.
You mentioned there that obviously the coronavirus is, and Arsenal weren't exactly a team with the most humongous budget anyway. But you mentioned now that obviously coronavirus has obviously impacted the world of football. So, it is a tough time. I saw an article that you wrote, just trying to think when this was it last week now, about a potential contract for Willian?
Yeah.
For 250 grand a week, which I'm sure everyone would be kind of like, oh my God, what is going on here? I'm sure you probably got a lot of that feedback to yourself in terms of like, what are you doing, Arsenal? 250k a week. Obviously, you mentioned that was pre-coronavirus. So is that something that is still in the works in regards to a deal with Willian, or is that something that we've had to put on the back burner now?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I did that column and basically dropped online, and one of my pals, who's our chief sub at the paper, basically immediately texted me. He's a mad Arsenal fan. Said, what are you going on about? £250,000 a week, and basically, they're sort of kind of quibbling over Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Why don't they just pay Aubameyang what he wants? And I kind of get that, but you've also got to remember that Willian is a free agent, and so listen. Traditionally, free agents have always commanded much more, whether that's a big signing on fee because the transfer fee isn't being paid, or, I mean, it even dates back to kind of Sol Campbell, doesn't it? I mean, Sol Campbell earned monster money because he was a free agent. So let's get it right. It's not as if you're buying Willian for 20 million quid and then giving him a £250,000 a week contract. That's how agents work. They demand that basically the transfer fee that club is saving gets paid on the wages. But what I would say is that, speaking to kind of people around it, I think the general feeling is that there'll be a drop even in the earnings of free agents. And that could be, 25% less for a good free agent signing, maybe up to 50%, less for a shall we say, a run-of-the-mill free agent signing. I think it's incredibly interesting times ahead. And I think that basically people say, you go and pick up a few free signings. There's some good business to be out there, which is true. But honestly, the clubs are feeling the pinch so much, not just in terms of transfer fees, but in terms of wages. That is why, Arsenal was struggling to kind of get those three signings over the line that Arteta wanted done, for Cedric Suarez, for Murray, for David Luiz last week. This is a real melting pot. And I can't stress enough that basically I don't think Arsenal will have huge amounts to spend at all this summer. And I know I said that last summer and ended up signing Nicola Pepe. But listen, there was a real turning point last summer when I think, in fairness to the club, they dug deep and the owners guaranteed the spending. There was a bit of a point in time there. I don't think you'll get that this season because Arsenal are having to face up to the realities like a few clubs. I see this talk about kind of maybe it'll be a good thing for Arsenal if they don't get into the Europa League because they'll have a free run at the Premier League. That is so much nonsense, believe me. because while it's good in theory, in practice, financially,
We
the
need
Europa League, yeah, you need the money.
Mm.
And, you know, the Champions League is king, obviously. We all know that. The Champions League will be a game changer for Arsenal. But the Europa League, you know, is still well worth qualifying for because it gives you money. It gives you serious money. It gives you millions and millions. And I just can't believe that people are so naive to think that you can kind of miss out on that and have a good run at the finish in the Premier League. Sounds great and it's a good idea, but the reality is that basically Arsenal would have to make severe cutbacks if they don't make European football. I mean, you know, it's a very weeks back about kind of the club having to kind of scale back on the kind of the, you know, for the summer on academy scouts. You know, they've got some good academy scouts, and basically, and the club is sort of kind of having to be fairly open about that and sort of kind of, you know, sort of admitting that basically, yeah, with, you know, basically there's no academy football going on the summer, so you know, we'll hopefully renew those contracts in September, but for now we'll have to leave it. That is how much the virus is, you know, and a lot of the finances are hurting clubs like Arsenal, you know, and it was not just Arsenal. I mean, Spurs will be in a similar situation, big new stadium, Liverpool, huge wage bill. We're not just talking about the bottom six here, guys. We're really not. We're talking football at the top end. This pandemic, financially, and everything that's associated with it has been an absolute game changer. I'm of the view that maybe if Arsenal do want to do some business this summer, then maybe they'll have to make tough decisions on, you know, on a Lacazette, for example, if he's indicating he won't re-sign. You know, if Aubameyang, they can't, you know, keep him, because really, can you know, he's going to be 31. Can you give him another Ozil-style contract? I don't think you can. And so, again, tough decisions, but maybe they'll have to do that to rebuild in other key areas, like a box-to-box midfielder, like a new centre-half, or, you know, someone else on the wing. I think there's particular areas in that squad that maybe you might have to sacrifice a star to bring in, you know, Guendouzi, offload a Guendouzi, you know, to basically strengthen that, you know, particular areas that Arsenal need to do, I think.
Dan, I've got a quick question around this that maybe ties into this. This is around the financial fair play and how we have basically have adjusted the rules a little bit to let clubs compile with it this season because they've struggled. How much would that affect potentially Arsenal's business or generally Premier League clubs' business and ability to move in the market?
Well, honestly, it's a great point in that basically it's a great opportunity for certain clubs. Because you're right. I mean, basically, at the moment, there's no way that basically a lot of the big Premier League clubs could possibly fall into line with FFP because their income has fallen so dramatically through TV cash and then gate revenue. And so basically, just on the turnover, you just cannot begin to balance the books. So basically, what UEFA are talking about doing is kind of almost merging to, sort of kind of the, how can I put it, kind of almost 2 years of FFP into one, and almost giving you a bit of a license to kind of almost spend what you want for 2 years. Although the reality is that long term, you'll still have to balance the books. So it's not kind of completely free pass as it was, say, 15, 16 years ago. So I think there'll be scope there, for some of the bigger clubs. I mean, I look at Man City. If Man City, have got the money, and they obviously have, then basically they can go and spend it. And basically they can do that in the next couple of years. So the opportunity is there for Arsenal. But I have to say, I think that, Arsenal pride themselves and the owners pride themselves on a self-sustaining model. I just don't think you'll get that kind of investment. We talk about kind of, shouldn't the Cronkies put money in? Well, they have, kind of underwritten and guaranteed the club's expenditure in last year's market, and then again also through the pandemic. So I think that's as far as you will get with them. But that is a big commitment, and ultimately they are the owners, so they're responsible for it anyway. But I don't think you'll kind of get beyond that. But that is a massive boost, because previously Arsenal were very, very conservative in the market because they had to kind of keep their kind of cash revenues afloat and keep the banks happy. And that intervention allowed them to spend that much more is maybe the easiest way of explaining it. But I do think it's potentially got a bit of a game changer, this FFP, simply because if you look at a club like Newcastle, sure, everyone's got strong views on kind of the Saudi takeover, whether it should be allowed, whether it's ethically right, whether it's right because of the piracy issue. It will allow, without doubt, any potential takeover to go and spend. Basically can go and recruit a top manager. They can go and recruit sort of kind of 3 or 4 major stars on huge contracts. It's a game changer for Newcastle. It's potentially a game changer for the Premier League.
Sammy, sorry, John. Just on that your point around the transfers. Last week, Sammy was on, and he spoke about Arsenal's potential interest in a few players, and one of them, considering we have the new signings of Mari and Louise who are signed to additional contracts now, he still spoke about our long-standing interest in Leipzig defender Dayot Upamecano. He also spoke about our apparent interest in Atletico Madrid midfielder Thomas Partey as well. So considering what you've mentioned about the finances, but these have been constant links that have been prevalent now for quite a few months. How do you sort of see these deals going?
Well, I just think, listen, I think the interest there is very real. I just think that the Upamecano, for example, is just going to be so sought after. I don't know whether you've been watching some of the Bundesliga, but he stands out for me. He's so graceful, I think, on the ball. He's very, very strong in the tackle. He looks, sometimes I look at Van Dijk playing for Liverpool and I think he stands out, so because he's an absolute colossus. I think Upamecano is into that category. But look, there's an interesting situation there because the contract, is sort of kind of been a bit of an issue for him running down. So can they do something along those lines? My theory is for that one is if Arsenal are not in the Champions League, then I think they'll have competition from clubs that are in the Champions League to try and get it done. But definitely, that's been, a long-standing target. For Thomas Partey, I think is an interesting one, just because, there's no doubt about it. Lacazette, I think, was very, very close in the past to joining Atletico. And then basically, I wonder whether Lacazette, could possibly potentially be, put into some sort of deal for Partey and basically trying to offset that. And that's the kind of thing that I was sort of kind of trying to hint at, and that basically, I wonder whether you can kind of offset one, for another in a player plus cash deals. Swap deals are so difficult because like one individual player is so difficult to do, because you kind of got to agree the contract, got to agree the price. They're hard to do, transfers on one deal, let alone 2 in the same transaction. So they are difficult to do, but I actually think that this summer you will see so many more player plus cash deals and swap deals. I really do. I think it's going to be a bit of a game changer.
I think that the Arthur and the Pjanic deal is probably a perfect example of that between Barca and Juve at the moment, isn't it?
It really is. I think that, I've been watching that with great interest. And do you know what? I've been talking to someone who's kind of, I know someone around the sort of the Arthur camp, shall I say. And then basically, up until a few weeks ago, he just didn't want to leave, the new camp, didn't want to leave Barcelona. He's made that absolutely clear publicly. And then basically, I guess once the writing is on the wall, but that was an interesting one, because under normal circumstances, I just don't see that one. I just don't think that either club, Barcelona clearly want to make sort of changes and improvements and do things. But, why is that deal sort of kind of attractive to Juve in a way that it's really interesting. I guess they both ultimately want a player that's slightly different, and they've kind of got that in those players. And that's the way forward. I think that'll be the interesting template, kind of, because I thought that was a really interesting deal. It's so rare, aren't they? I was writing about sort of swap deals. And honestly, concerning Arsenal, you had Ashley Cole, William Gallas, 2006. You had Sanchez, obviously, and Mkhitaryan. Yeah. But that was a disaster, and that allowed kind of agents to take the mickey. Really,
was that Reyes Baptista? Was that a swap deal?
Yeah, was
that a loan? Was that a loan?
It was a swap tied to a loan, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah.
And it was so complex. It's not true. And so, I thought that was, I remember that one, and kind of, Reyes gets a bit of a, obviously, with what's happened subsequently, he's viewed with more affection, but actually as a player, what he did, I don't think always gets the credit it deserves, because he kind of gave that team, that amazing team, a bit of a turbo boost in my view. And so basically sometimes it's like the subtleties and sort of the additions to the squad that can make all the difference. And I thought that Reyes made that difference.
Mm. I mean, we could do with a Reyes right now. I can't lie to you. It's,
yeah, no. I like Saka so much. I think that Saka is such a good player. He's just so good, isn't he? I mean, he's played fullback. He's provided assists from fullback, and he's nowhere near a fullback. He's played in the midfield three. He switches in the same game from the midfield three to wide. He's such a good footballer.
Yeah,
I think we really respect him as a quality player. John, I just wanted to ask you on that thread of club finances and the point that you made about maybe having to offload a few of our players. One of my worries as an Arsenal fan is that we don't demand or get the best value for our players. Yeah. So we've got quite a few assets in terms of players who we could get rid of to bring in some finance to supplement us, either in terms of transfers or sustain the club or whatnot. Guendouzi's one that was mentioned. Laka's one that was mentioned. My worry is about the price, the type of price that we could get for players, especially in this COVID context, and then not commanding a good price, and then not being able to utilize that in the way that we should. Because I am asking questions about the way that we've conducted transfers over the last couple of seasons, and for me it's not so much about us not having money to spend. I think we've spent money, we haven't spent the money well. But I wanted to know kind of your thoughts on that.
Listen, I do agree with that. It's weird. I was thinking actually, sort of kind of as I was getting up this morning, because knowing I was coming on the show, thinking about it, and kind of, I guess I was thinking about that kind of. I think it's such a fine balance, and I think that some clubs get that balance right, and that I think in recent seasons Arsenal haven't got that balance right, and I think that some of the hierarchy, I guess, have kind of got to look and learn lessons, from previous seasons. But I have to say that basically, how many times, it's easy for me to say that, but how many times have we been here before? Whether that's kind of letting Nasri's contract run down, letting, Fabregas go, it's Percy, absolutely.
Aubameyang.
Absolutely. And that's the point, isn't it? But I think that basically we don't seem to learn and engage. And I feel that, the glaring, the one thing that I do think is that the club has to be stronger in terms of, they said a couple of, I think this sort of last year they repeated it, but they said it kind of, a couple of years ago, any player that basically, has got 2 years left, we have to sell. We cannot let these players continually get into the final 2 years. But then you have to balance that with Aubameyang, for example, last summer, in that basically my feeling was that there was probably some interest then, in Aubameyang, and they could have sold him. I think there was interest here and from abroad. And then basically they were clearly trying to do a contract with him, which would have been the perfect solution, but they couldn't get that done. He wouldn't sign the contract. And at what point then do you say, well, if you're not going to sign the contract, then we'll have to sell him. But if they'd sold him last summer, the fans would have been in absolute uproar. And then you get the accusations, Arsenal lack ambition, they're selling their best players. But then equally, then this summer, you're getting the accusation that Arsenal are not very well run. So you kind of can't win, because if you show the ambition to try and keep your best player, even though you're sort of kind of, allowing him to run the contract down, then basically, you know, you get criticised with 1 year left, and then basically if you sell him with 2 years left, then you get criticised. But the simple reasoning is Arsenal have to. That's why Arsenal have to make a decision on Lacazette this summer. You cannot let him go into another 2 years. But generally, you know, I mean, look at Özil. I mean, Özil. If Arsenal had let Özil run his contract down and leave on a free, and not signed him to that £350,000 a week contract, the fans would have been crazy, and rightly so. You know, because he'd been a free, and they shouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. And I think that they just need to reset that, to send a strong message to say that we're a club that basically doesn't do, you know, big players going into the final 2 years. And dare I say it, that basically one of the clubs that I think has got that right, I think is Spurs, for a random example. You know, they're basically, I always remember a really good example was when with Peter Crouch, when Peter Crouch was still an England player. You know, Peter Crouch, basically, they wanted to do some business on the striker, wanted to offload Crouch. And you approach in the last couple of days of the transfer window, and basically he wouldn't re-sign. They offered him a contract, he wouldn't re-sign it. And then basically, so Daniel Levy said, right, if you're not re-signing, if you don't go, we've you know, agreed a deal for you. If you don't go, you will not be in our Premier League squad. And that is getting tough. And, you know, that is ultimately the sort of kind of tough stance that Arsenal need to do now. And that is the kind of, you know, Edu is relatively new to the role, but that is the kind of authority that he has to exact, I think, on this squad. And then basically say, we've got to sort it out. We've got to get away from this kind of chaotic summer each and every year, where we've got a player running into the final 2 years, potentially 1 year, and he could be sold to a direct rival. It's just not how football clubs should be run. Not of the club the size of Arsenal. And I have to say, I think Edu deserves a little bit of time before we make a judgment on that, because obviously he's relatively new to the role. But where I think is, you know, people will be looking at is Raul Sanalai, because basically, you know, he's then got to get this period right as well, because he's head of football operations. And I just think between them, they've got to kind of, you know, get this balance right between the point of selling and be strong enough to make that big decision, and then basically getting their transfer market and their transfer values right. Because you're quite right, you know, you're not going to get anything like the value that you should if you're selling under pressure, under duress, and at the wrong time. You're just going to, you know, get mugged off year after year, aren't you?
I mean, this kind of ties into maybe two players that are going to enter the last 24 months of the contract. So one of them is Leno, which I very much imagine Arsenal will trying to keep hold of him. But we find ourselves in a similar situation. If he doesn't sign this summer, then we'll be under duress next summer. And Guendouzi is actually one. So maybe the Guendouzi situation will pan out a little differently, given some of the stories and rumours coming out now. And he might leave this summer, but he left to sign a contract or leave this summer really as well. Otherwise, we'll be under duress next summer again. So, what do you think? Do you think Arsenal will actively look to kind of resolve those situations, or do you think this is still an ongoing problem? Of course, we will only be smarter after this summer to have some indication. But it'd be good to see if you know there's some sort of strategy behind this, because it's difficult for us to see.
Yeah, I definitely think with Leno, you can't let him run into the final 2 years. I mean, it's become a little bit weird, isn't it, now, because of that sort of elongated transfer window. So, again, kind of got to give him a bit of a chance on that. But it's the ultimate test, because Leno, you know, I haven't done my sums up on that one, to be honest with you. But basically, you know, if he's running into the final 2 years, then basically you've kind of got to make those sort of kind of tough calls. He's such a good goalkeeper, isn't he? And he's such a good character. I mean, Martinez, you know, to give him his due, been amazing, I think, since he made crucial saves. But basically that allows you then to have two very, very good goalkeepers. But I just think you've kind of got to make that decision. Guendouzi, I think, is different in that I don't think he's Arteta's cup of tea. And I'm pretty sure that if the right offer comes along, then that's one that they'll sacrifice to raise money for elsewhere. So I just think it's one of those things. I think that basically, if I'm brutally honest, I think he's had a few doubts for some while now on Guendouzi, about discipline, about sort of kind of game intelligence, kind of on pitch intelligence and discipline. And I just think maybe he's one that ultimately would be sacrificed to maybe bring in someone else. If you could do some business on Guendouzi, sacrifice him to bring in a Thomas Partey, then I think you'll have done well. I think that Guendouzi can be a good rabble rouser and sometimes sort of spot a pass, and he's got great energy and so on. But I do think that maybe, just maybe, they're kind of missing a bit more quality on the ball. And I think that basically that would be so good. I looked at I followed sort of kind of European football very closely, and I've seen quite a lot of Partey. And for example, I think Partey is basically a player that you can give him the ball in a tight area and he'll keep the ball, and he's very good technically. I think he's good and he's got energy, and I just think he would be in a bit of an upgrade, for example, if you could kind of do a like for like.
100%.
Yeah.
Go on, Sean.
Oh, sorry, Lewis. John, so you spoke about Guendouzi not necessarily being Arteta's cup of tea, but someone who very much is Arteta's cup of tea seems to be Granit Xhaka. Now, obviously, we know prior to the end of the Emery era, the way he fell out with the Arsenal fans, and it looked like he was going to be out of the club in January. And obviously, Arteta had a bit of a word with him, and he seems very committed to the cause now. And obviously, he's tied down to a long-term contract at Arsenal, but he's still someone who's quite a bit of a divisive figure. So it'd be good to hear sort of like where our current standing on him is. But Arteta seems to be very keen on him.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I don't know whether it matters so much what I think of him as what you guys think of him. So kind of, I'll throw it back to you in a minute. But he is an interesting one in that I had some sympathy with him over what happened. I just felt that there was so much negativity at that time that I felt for him when he came off that pitch that day. Should he have reacted like that? Absolutely not. But come on, I just felt that he deserved a bit more. I don't think it was right. I don't agree with kind of the, that sort of kind of booing and sort of kind of that culture where he's constantly getting criticism. Is he the player that we kind of thought he was going to be when they signed him? No, I don't think he is that kind of, is that box to box. But I feel strongly that basically Arsenal are a better team with Granit Xhaka in it. And, when he's not there, I think he offers a bit more discipline. He offers a bit more structure to the team. I like to think he's improved that kind of recklessness in his tackling. I think he used to switch off a bit more. Maybe he's stopped that a little bit more. We don't talk about it so much, do we? Kind of, let's just see him go and do that on Wednesday night you watch. But it just, I feel that he's improved, and I feel that he's partly improved because of Arteta's man management. One of the first things he did, I mean, if you remember, Arteta takes over just before Christmas. There's no doubt about it. Xhaka was on his way out. Xhaka was ostracised. Xhaka was finished. And basically, quite rightly, he and his representatives were looking at alternatives and basically hoping to do that in January. And then to, kind of turn that situation around, I think has been, really impressive. I think he's done similar with Mustafi. Mustafi is not going to be a world beater. He's not exactly the kind of, long-term answer. But blimey, he's done all right, kind of thing in difficult circumstance. I just think that Xhaka, he is what he is. And he signed to a long-term contract, signed up under Emery, wasn't he? And I think he does a steady job for the team. He's not going to be that dynamic box-to-box player, but I think Arsenal are a better team with him in it. And I guess ultimately that's all you can judge him on. I don't know what you guys think of Xhaka. Is he a kind of a long-term solution?
No, not for me anyway. I mean, I completely get your points that he definitely solidifies us, and he's got that kind of positional sense and what you're lacking with Guendouzi and stuff like that. And there's no qualms about it. We definitely are a better side with Xhaka inside. But I think if you want to be at the level where Arsenal should be, I don't think he's the required quality. I think your Thomas Parteys are your required quality to take you there. And it would be interesting to see if we do sign Partey, somehow we manage to convince Lacazette to go Atletico. I don't know if that's something he's interested in. But it would be interesting to see if Arteta would go with a Xhaka Partey pivot, or would that is that more of a Xhaka replacement?
Yeah, I think from I mean, Partey, I think, does sort of kind of sit deeper, doesn't he? So I don't know whether I think he's actually a bit more energetic, but I don't know whether the two could play together. Sometimes I guess in that situation, maybe a coach has a better eye, but basically I guess you only tend to find out when it happens. I mean, look at Ceballos. I think Ceballos basically has had his best games, I think, when he's been playing with a six, an anchor, and so he's been off the pivot like that. I don't think Ceballos will stay. No. I mean, the loan deal as such was massive. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a huge deal. That basically have Arsenal kind of got value for money. I mean,
how much did we pay for the loan deal, John?
Well, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a lot of money, and basically, I forget off the top of my head. Sorry, apologies, but basically, it was a lot of money. Plus, the wages are huge. I mean, Tottenham balked at it. Basically, Tottenham basically said it was way too expensive. Way too expensive, and they pulled out quite early, to be honest, because of basically the loan fee and also the wages. I mean, listen, it's there's nothing untoward about it. It's what a lot of the bigger clubs do now. They kind of have a sort of kind of a player that's kind of a rising talent, very, very good talent, like a Ceballos, and say, well, actually, if he's going to get limited game time here, then basically, we can, sort of kind of let him go out. I mean, if you remember, there was a bit of doubt, wasn't there, at the time, just at the final time, because, Real Madrid had a couple of, sort of kind of late injuries before the start of the season. And then basically all of a sudden there was a doubt over whether Ceballos would happen. Well, Ceballos did happen, and that's largely because it was a financial consideration, so they basically it was a big deal though. So again, it's one of those where we kind of think, oh, he's only a loan player. Well, the reality is even loans these days are incredibly expensive.
It was 15 million. It's reported as being £15 million.
Well, it must. If it's reported as such, it must be.
Was it reported by John, Shabs? Was it reported by John?
I was trying to quickly Google John Cross, Ceballos loan fee John Cross, but
I mean that sounds an awful lot of money for a loan, but yeah,
I mean, again, I guess if you were signing, like one of European football's best young talents as he's billed on a 4-year contract, I guess you might end up paying a £60 million fee, and then you're thinking, oh, that's quite a good price. So I guess you kind of got to evaluate everything, but putting in that context. But those are the sort of fees that you kind of you're up against, and it was a business transaction for Madrid. It really was.
Okay, I'm just going to ask some questions to you from our Discord server just before we let you go. So I've got one here from Donatelli. He asks, what will Arteta's targets be for next season? Will he be expected to seriously challenge for the top 4, or are the board looking for continued improvement?
I think it's more continued improvement. I mean, listen, I guess, when you pick apart, Arsenal's squad, what will the squad look like next season? Honestly, at this point in time, I couldn't honestly say. It's a really weird one. I just think in June, you've normally got an idea who's staying, the primary targets, whether they're achievable. I think so much is dependent on kind of what Arsenal, do at the finish of the season. If they make Europa, if they make the Champions League, let's be honest, reality is probably gone, isn't it? I would have thought. But the Europa, I think, is still, still doable. That will be different. That will encourage them. Who's going to, who's going to sign contracts? And I think there's so many, questionables, so many variables there. I just think at this moment in time, I think next season should be about improvement. I mean, you can exceed expectations. Leicester, look at Leicester. They're a good example. Leicester, if you really pick apart their squad, is it that much better than Arsenal's? And yet they've kind of been third for much of the season. Well, you could have a kind of, that freaky season. And they're basically, I think Arteta's a really good coach. And I think maybe kind of could exceed expectation. But I genuinely think it will be, 2 years at the very least as a rebuilding job.
You mentioned like the primary targets there. Do you have an idea of who Arsenal's primary targets are, or is that, like you said, it's solely dependent on how this season finishes and what kind of funds we have available?
Oh, I do think it's very much dependent on what's how this season finishes and basically the finances. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't mind. I still think that there's an interest in Willian. So I think that basically, do they need a Willian at this point in time? That's a weird one. I did a sort of a kind of a column last week saying that basically, people are trying to put Coutinho in, which is, but do Arsenal again? Do they buy it on that one? I can't see that one, because even with, him being on a loan, that it just comes back to the fact it would have to be a big contract, and again I can't see that one. Saliba, everyone talks at the club about how impressive he is as a player and potentially as a character. He's sort of kind of almost, a really good profile of a player. How, he's sort of very graceful on the ball as a centre half. He looks strong, he looks positive. And, so that's interesting, and so that'll be hopefully a better balance to the defence. Holding has come back quite well, hasn't he? Sort of the last couple of games, I think, and I'm a big fan of his. So, maybe they don't need to strengthen so much at centre half. They certainly don't need to at fullback now. They've got the fullback, positions covered off. Midfield, they definitely, I think, they need to do something. Basically, I mean, they're not going to get rid of Ozil. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of almost, I'm a big Ozil fan. I like to see players.
Dan's got a mate.
Well, it's really weird, right? Because basically, I always have this laugh.
Hi, John.
Right. Well, good. I'm pleased there's someone else out there. But it's really weird because I just think, why do we watch football? I just think that basically we watch football to see different unpredictable talents. And I just think Ozil will drive you nuts on occasions. And my God, I'll give him some stick for poor games. But, on other times, he just runs the game. And he's like a fabulous, fabulous player. And years to come, we'll look back and say, blimey, they signed Mesut Ozil for £42.5 million from Real Madrid. And he was there for, for all this time, and it was just, there were amazing moments. There should have been more, please don't get me wrong, and the hope was he'd push Arsenal to the next level, and it's not worked out like that. But I still think as an individual talent, I mean, it's funny really, our chief sports writer, Andy Dunn, basically, I always laugh with him because he's sort of the chairman of the Mesut Ozil fan club. I mean, it's just we're in short supply.
Where do I sign up?
But I just don't you think he's just such a talent, isn't he? And it's like there's some magical moments. I thought that Arteta was getting the best out of him, and I just think at the same time, it's probably been a difficult time for him because there was so much written and said about the pay cuts and that was difficult. And yet I still respect him on that view, in that basically, if he wants to give his money to where he wants to, well, fine, absolutely fine. Why shouldn't he? And I just think that basically, I feel a bit sorry for him on that level. And then basically, if he wants to look at what he does charity-wise, I think it's outstanding. And I've always been quite neutral on this. And I think sometimes if you write stuff, then basically people think you're being critical. And the fact is that I wasn't. And I just basically kind of stay neutral on it. And I just think that, I still think he's a wonderful footballer, and clearly there's, you know, lockdown hasn't been good for him and everything that's gone with it. He's not been playing. You know, was he right to come back into the team? Arteta clearly doesn't think he's up to that level yet. But Arteta's a, you know, an intelligent guy. Just look at how much he used him, you know, in that first period before lockdown. I'm sure he'll get more game time. I feel positive about that. And that basically you just need to use your assets, because why on earth would he leave the football club? Because no one else is going to pay him that much. And I feel really strongly about this. Maybe I speak to too many agents and too sympathetic on players. You give a player a contract, you can't just withdraw it and stop it when things don't quite work out your way. I mean, how would we like that in a sort of kind of, you know, in a normal walk of life? And it's just ridiculous. It's shameful, I think, sometimes the way that basically, you know, people and sort of kind of fans and indeed clubs then treat players. I think you're there for the good and the bad. And if a player doesn't do enough or doesn't work hard enough to kind of, you know, and then lets himself down, then okay, deserves the criticism. But I still feel that Ozil, in that 3-month period before lockdown under Arteta, showed again that he can be a very good asset. And I think it would be foolish not to try and utilise, you know, him to his best skills. Don't you agree?
I suppose I do just feel just on that there is a bit of frustration on the part of the club as to us not working to get the best out of Ozil. I always felt that Ozil played some of his best football when we had players like Cazorla in the team who did their work deeper and who could get the ball to him in more advanced positions and let him do his work. And he had players like Sanchez who he could combine with. He had Walcott who could go in behind as well. Giroud kind of got in the way a little bit, but he could still play. Giroud was very good with his feet.
That's a nice way to put it, that is.
Yeah, no, especially for a big man, he was good with his feet. So Ozil could still combine and do his work. And I think what we saw, Ramsey as well. So there were things for the moving targets and things for Ozil to work off. And I think we slowly, you know, we lost Cazorla for a long time to injury. Still haven't replaced him in the midfield in terms of his functionality. Kind of lost what Walcott brought us in terms of that player who would stretch teams and go in behind and, you know, pick out targets. And we've kind of gone a different way. So that we haven't worked so much as a club to get the best out of Ozil, I suppose. My frustration with Ozil is sometimes I don't want to blame him for his body language. You know, I've gone and sat and, you know, held season tickets and gone and watched him play, and I think he does pick up a lot of stick for him being lazy or lethargic when actually he did used to cover a lot of ground. My frustration with him though is sometimes his application and some of the his application in games or lack of application and some of the off-field kind of antics. What he gets up to in his private life is up to him, but the stuff about him being at home playing Fortnite and stuff and playing computer games, video games, whilst we're really struggling as a team and he is supposed to be one of our leaders, is
the fact that he won't travel outside the M25.
Yeah. But I think we're responsible in parts as well, and I think as well the match with Emery was not the right. Going from Arsene Wenger, a manager who's liberates players and encourages them to find their own solutions and is really focused on actually playing football, to Emery, who was just not the right fit as a coach for so many of our players, you know, is I think we have to bring that into the equation as well when giving an overall evaluation on Ozil. I'm not sure what the others think.
I mean, you guys know what I think, so yeah.
Nah, yeah, we don't need to know what you mean.
Go for it, go on.
Very similar to Shabs, but as he outlined, I think a lot of responsibility also lies with the clubs to create environments to elevate their best talent. And for Ozil and Sanchez, we didn't do this. So we had both of them players, and they were both top players, and they played at good levels for us as well for a few seasons. And it was widely recognised in the Premier League that they're absolute top players. And we never complimented the squad to make it really go another level up. And there's only so much both of them can do. Sanchez was less patient, left. Was obviously kicked off a bit of a fuss and left. and Ozil signed a big contract. And even when he signed that big contract, the manager that came in really had no use for him, didn't want to use him initially, and then realised they couldn't sell him because obviously he's on this big contract. So tried to reintegrate him, but did it poorly. So I think Arteta's time will be a bit different for Ozil. What he can do under Arteta will remain to be seen as well, because I think they kind of want to start fresh and new again, and obviously Ozil some of the old squads and maybe some of the old negative things that happened in the last few seasons. So yeah, it's interesting to see. But I fully agree with the part about the contracts in general in sports. Obviously we've all watched the Last Dance documentary. So Scottie Pippen signed a very bad contract, and the Chicago Bulls weren't ready to give him a better contract, even though he deserved one. And that happens in football too. So when the club then gives a player a very good contract, and why would the player go back and say, listen, I'll sign on reduced terms unless I'm running out of my contract? So contract is bad given the circumstance and context. But at the time, if he wouldn't have signed on, it would have been a big story, and it was a big positive story for us that he actually signed on. Obviously, it didn't work out the last couple of years since that signature, but yeah, this is what happens, and it ties into poor planning. If we'd have signed him on before, or if we'd have sold him for good value, it might have been a different story.
Yeah, 100% agree on the contract. 100%. Honestly, you know, people forget this, and that's what drives me insane about this. Basically, yeah, I mean, you know, it was what, 3.5 year contract, and it's like £350,000 a week. I couldn't believe the length of it and the size of it, but you know, Arsenal fans were going crazy about how an amazing deal it was and how brilliant it was that we signed. So let's kind of, you know, not forget that. And you know, I hear different versions, you know, from within the club about who wanted to drive it, who wanted to, you know, who thought it was a good idea, who thought it was a bad idea. But then basically, it's just ultimately you're driven to that because Sanchez wanted to go, and you had to do business on Sanchez. And the reality was that you should have done business on Sanchez in the August.
Yeah,
Arsenal felt that they were messed around by Man City, and then basically Man City probably felt that they were messed around by Arsenal, and it just gets, you know, somewhere in there there's a complete breakdown, and someone should have been a bit more, you know, a bit stronger on it. And then Arsenal were trapped, and then basically Man United seemed the best, you know, solution. But that deal was an absolute nightmare to get Mkhitaryan, you know, to get not a great fee, to get Mkhitaryan, who has been a very good player. He's a very good player, but basically they didn't really want him, to be honest with you. And then basically, you know, then having to improve his contract to make it happen. I mean, it was just farcical. If you look back upon that deal, it's just an absolute farce. And then on top of that, you get this monster deal for Mesut Ozil. I mean, you know, crikey. If you can't learn lessons out of that, then really you are.
Then we are doomed. We are doomed.
Yeah, absolutely. This is me and you talking, isn't it? They're basically both really like Ozil. And then basically, but we're still going, well, you know, because the reality was in that December, in that January time, Ozil had good offers from you know, at home and abroad, and then basically there's no two ways about it. I think people think, oh, kind of, you know, Arsenal got suckered into that, but Ozil would have gone somewhere really good as a free agent, really, really good, and then basically there's no doubt in my mind, and he would have got that sort of similar money as well as a free agent, you know, for the reasons we discussed earlier about Willian. And that's just life. But the basic Arsenal felt it was you know, it was a price worth paying. And 3.5 years on, it doesn't really feel like they've got value for money. And yet here we are saying that we still love Ozil. Why? Because we still think there's something there from Ozil, because he's that magical mercurial midfielder. And I love players like that. I love kind of different.
John, I've just got one quick question to ask you before we stop holding you hostage and we let you go.
I can talk about Mesut Ozil all day.
David Ornstein reported today that following Balogun's not going to be extending his contract, and he will be well, he'll leave this summer basically. And I've seen a lot of him in the under 23s, mainly just like highlights and clips, and he looks like the real deal, and he looks like someone that we may regret losing in a few years' time. I just wanted to know if you had any knowledge as to whether those reports are true from David, and if Balogun is indeed gonna leave the club this summer.
I haven't really. I mean, David's a really good mate of mine, so I'm sure that'll be right. But it's just, again, you've got to find that balance, haven't you, between, I mean, actually going to see the under 23s is quite, sometimes can be sort of a treat, if you've got young kids and you sort of live fairly nearby, because basically you can kind of, on the other occasion that they're sort of kind of, that you can go and see him in the stadium and what have you. And then basically, clearly he's a very big talent, but you are trapped in this situation whereby, how can I best explain it? I think obviously it's sort of kind of slightly coming into play with Saka. I know the club are much more hopeful on Saka and signing, but I think what's an interesting one for a club like Arsenal and younger players is that some of the younger players, can be easily on something like £3,000 or £4,000 a week, which is great money. Please don't get me wrong, but then basically when you're seeing Chelsea signing up a Hudson-Odoi at 18, 19 on £120,000 a week, the money that they can go and get elsewhere is phenomenal, as basically on a small compensation package. It's a bit like Sancho at Man City. Sancho was offered a huge deal to stay at City. I mean, Arsenal were in the market for Sancho, and then basically, were ready to offer him a huge deal to come join them. But then basically, it's what you can earn elsewhere as a free or as a cheap compensation player, as a young player, you can earn far greater if you exercise your right to move, basically, and you're kind of caught in the trap there. And so kind of what we're talking about earlier about sort of those letting those deals run down becomes even more of an acute issue for younger players now. And I think you'll see increasingly, the sort of kind of younger players, exercising that right, particularly if they feel that they kind of could progress elsewhere. Does he feel then that basically he's going to get the opportunities at Arsenal? I feel like as if if he thinks he's going to play lots of games next season, then surely he stays. I think you've got to balance that as a young player, and most are intelligent enough to do so. So I think there has to be an element of kind of, are you going to get the games, together with the kind of the feelings of the finances of the contract. So again, it's kind of probably someone that's caught in the middle. You can be the best young prospect, I think, and sometimes still not make that step up. You have to have the right platform, the coach with the right confidence in you. And basically, if you're not feeling that from all sides, then maybe, because I think you can be a prodigious talent at 18, 19, but then if you're not knocking on the door regularly, which he's not at first team level, then I'm sorry, but your head is going to be turned if you've spent the last 5 years being told you're going to be a first team player and you're going to be a huge star, which is the case with him.
Agreed. John, man, I really want to thank you for coming on. Like, it's been a pleasure. Like, I've been following you for such a long time, so it is honestly a great pleasure to talk to you. No,
thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. It's really nice. Enjoyed it.
Thank you,
John. Thank you very much.
John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, John.
Nice to talk to you guys.
Cheers.
Take care.
Recording ended.
Yeah. Record.
When I spit bars in a rave, man, I go hard like Santan.
Hello, welcome to another Touchy Gooners podcast. Actually, this is part 2. I don't know why I'm doing the intro again. This is the part 2 of Touchy Gooners episode. I hope you enjoyed the John Cross interview. Hopefully, we'll be having a lot more interviews where they come from. On part 2, I'm joined by Dr. Leroy. How you doing?
What's good?
Welcome back.
What's up, man? You good?
Yeah, good. Well, you won 4-0, so lots to be happy about. And I've got Seun as well, who I know is ecstatic about a 4-0 victory from his boy Arteta.
Yeah, it's good, man. Let's keep on winning.
Calm and collected, yeah? Calm and collected.
That's it, bro.
Well, me and Leroy, obviously, we were on... Oh, my God, West Ham 2-1. Wow. Me and Leroy were on the Discord together doing the live chat. If you guys haven't actually joined the Discord, you need to get on there because we're doing live chats for the games and it's just really fun. Everyone on there, I think we got over like 600 members now. Like it's growing really quickly. Everyone loves it. So join that and you can tune into our live match shows. So yeah, me and Leroy gave most of our thoughts on the game during there. So Seun, what was your thoughts on, first of all, the starting lineup? Obviously quite a bit of rotation. And second of all, our performance.
Yeah, so no problems with the rotation. We've got 5 games in just over 2 and a bit weeks, so naturally everyone will get a bit of a chance. So he kept with the 3 at the back. He brought in Ceballos started alongside Xhaka, and Bellerin came back in, and you had Tierney at left full back as well. So it was interesting to see. Obviously, you know my boy Nelson. He was a bit. He played more of a central role, which was interesting. I'd like to know the reasoning behind that, but it helped, I guess, with a few overloads in the first half as well. So we were quite dominant, which was good. I mean, Norwich aren't anything to write home about. I think apart from Villa, they're the worst defensive side in the league. So if we can't beat them at home, we've got issues anyway, but we'd have even bigger issues if we couldn't beat them at home. So no, we started well, passed the ball well. Ceballos was very, very good today. It was like his second iconic performance after the one where you were ranting against Burnley this season.
Yeah. At least we got another one. At least we got another one in a minute, yeah.
So yeah, no, so it was first 45. It was I was saying as well. It's the first time in yonks I've seen us just sustain attack after attack after attack in the first half, which was nice to see. So it was nice to see them pinned back in. And it was also nice to see our dominance rewarded with 2 goals as well in the first half. So that was good.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I can't remember the last time that we actually had a performance where we were pinning the opposition back. Like, I think it was more testament to. I don't want to come across as like this negative Norman who, the performance is good from us and one of our better ones. But I think it really was testament to how poor Norwich were. The fact that they literally did fuck all. They barely got into our half. When you've got Kolasinac, who is like the formation and how we set up is quite. It was quite interesting today because Kolasinac was almost playing as like a left back. Then you had like Tierney as a left winger, and then you had Aubameyang as sort of like a centre forward. It was a very attack-minded formation where we were in possession. Leroy, you're more of the skeptic amongst us, and maybe against the Arteta regime. I know you like Arteta, but what did you think of the performance today?
Well, I feel like I've earned to be. I mean, Arsenal has made me a skeptic over time, but you can't be a skeptic about today's performance because today's performance was surprisingly very good. It's interesting that Arteta has had to now. I know, obviously, it doesn't come exactly like this on the pitch, but had to revert to a back 3 similar to every other coach that we've had to try and hide the weaknesses that we have at central defence. But we looked really, really fluid today. I specifically like the Ceballos and Xhaka tandem today together. I can see why they were used together in midfield. Norwich weren't really offering that much. They didn't really have a very athletic midfield that's going to run all over us. So I feel like Ceballos and Xhaka really, really bossed the game today. And I thought they were very, very good, particularly Ceballos. We looked really fluid.
Ceballos, right?
Pardon?
Perfect game for Ceballos.
Yeah, perfect game for him. Yeah, he had all of the ball. We completely dominated. We were just sustaining attack after attack. We had all of the ball. And the thing is, having Ceballos in the team makes a massive difference because you could see from today, he makes that pass which really sets off the attack. So he makes that pass which makes the defenders turn around, which is a problem. And not many players in our team do that. Like Xhaka makes a different type of pass. He makes a sort of that penetrative pass from deeper in the midfield into the centre. But Ceballos makes that pass from the centre of the midfield through into the attack to start creating an attacking situation. And he did that so many times. I mean, if Bellerin was a little bit better today, we could have had a couple more goals.
Yeah.
But overall, it was a really good, really dominant performance. And we got a little bit lucky with the first goal, obviously, with a poor mistake from Tim Krul. But
just talking about that first goal, because we've had a few. I think Eddie obviously scored the goal the other day, but we've had a few of those kind of moments where we're putting pressure on the goalkeeper and they made a mistake. I think maybe we've only scored like 2 of them, but we've had a few of those moments. Is that a strategy from Arsenal obviously it is a strategy from Arsenal because they're putting pressure on the keeper, but is there something that Arteta should be taking credit for, or is it just like crap from the goalkeepers? Or is this something that Arteta could be taking credit for and like a way that he's got us playing?
I mean, personally, I think both of them are a bit of a coincidence, but obviously that's me being the skeptic that I am. But in terms of how we're trying to press, Arteta clearly has tried to implement a reasonable pressing formation, making people stand in the right places, making people block off the right passing lanes, not standing too close, little things like that, which are making a bit of a difference. It's difficult to sustain because our team just isn't up to it physically. I feel like our team get very, very tired, but in terms of, you can give them credit for, we're pressing in the right way. Clearly it's working. But obviously when we play the better teams, it doesn't work so well. So how much credit you can give them, I don't know. You have to take that with a pinch of salt.
Yeah. Well, let's go through the goals then. So obviously we spoke about the first one, which was, a simple mistake and, the classic pressing of, and I think that makes a difference it's no coincidence to me that Eddie and Oba are the ones who Lacazette hasn't quite got the legs to be able to do that kind of that pressing of the goalkeeper. The second goal was, I'm trying to think of what the second goal was now.
Was it Oba's first? No, Xhaka's, yeah.
Xhaka. That was a very well made goal, I thought. That was like really well structured. We moved the ball really well. It was a nice pass inside from Aubameyang and a really cool finish from Xhaka. Yeah,
no, it was a really, really, really well constructed goal. Great finish. I mean, everything you said. I think that goal kind of epitomised how we played today in terms of our fluidity and our link up. And we were relatively precise in the final third, Bellerin aside. So yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, what do you think, Seun?
I totally agree with you. I think it helps that obviously we had a lot more just general passes in the team today. So obviously we know despite David Luiz's nightmares at the back, he can distribute well. And obviously the second goal came from a fantastic ball from him over to that side, Tobber as well. And then Xhaka arriving in the box like a box-to-box midfielder kind of tells you what you need to know about Norwich, to be honest. But yeah, no. It was a very well constructed goal, and we found ourselves a lot in promising positions in the first half. Like you said, we were breaking lines very, very often. Players were taking up good positions as well, and I think this is where I say, despite obviously Reece Nelson probably needing to improve on his aggressiveness with sometimes the ball at his feet, he's another passing option in between the line, and because he's quite technically secure, it's you can easily bounce passes back off him as well. So it'd be interesting to see sort of like our passing angles and our pass selections after this game, sort of the most common passing choices, because first half there was a lot down his side as well, and obviously through Kolasinac and Tierney, who was always a spare man due to the fact he was holding the width on the left hand side as well. So it was a nice balance, as you often see with Arteta. He likes one side to be inside, and then like one side to be holding the width. Now often we've seen on Pepe's side, he's the one who's tasked with holding the width, but obviously it's flipped a little bit now, and in this back three formation, Tierney's the one who's playing as a sort of a left wing back, and he's the one holding the width, and obviously it suits him because his delivery into the ball is fantastic, and then obviously it allows the person playing in on the right to station themselves in field a bit more as well. So it allows us for a bit more of a technical overload, but also keeping nice positions on the pitch as well.
The third goal came from another Norwich defensive mistake, but Aubameyang does what he does best. Nice, cool finish. 19 league goals this season in 27 games. I think his record is 51 in 78 for us, which I mean is legend status numbers.
Fastest Arsenal player to reach 50 league goals in it. So I mean, ahead of he was like a good few games faster than Henry as well. So and considering our lack of creativity, what does that tell you? So yeah, no, 100%. I mean, we're gonna miss him, right?
Well, his first half season, he came in and banged out banged
10
out in
and
that
13,
season.
I think it was first
Then-
half of the season.
Then the second season, he wins jointly the Golden Boot.
Mhm.
This season, he's in the position, this joint top for the Golden Boot again. I just think that's been in an Arsenal team that's poor and an Arsenal team that's been getting worse, and now we're comfortably mid-table, and I think deservedly so.
Don't create
To-
chances at all.
To put out those numbers is sensational. I mean, I can't say enough superlatives about Aubameyang and how good he is. So we are really going to miss him. I know a lot of people, there's this debate about should we give him 300 bags and put him in another Ozil situation. I'm sorry, Ozil's not done in terms of production what Aubameyang's done. So I don't even think that's a fair comparison from the jump. You've got to think what Aubameyang's done deserves that 300 grand. Even if he produces that for one more season and then really kind of tells off what he's done so far, I feel like he's deserving of that big contract.
So you would give him the contract?
Yeah, I'd give him the contract.
Okay. I'm quite
But the thing
surprised to hear that from you because it's not a great business selection, I don't think.
It's not a great business decision, but what I'm weighing up is how much is it going to cost you to replace him?
Yeah.
Aubameyang, we're not going to get a guarantee. I mean, I know myself and yourself, we're looking at Jonathan David. You put me onto him and I'm thinking, yeah, he looks very good.
Yeah,
but that's not guaranteed. He's not guaranteed to score. So if we're going to replace Aubameyang, you're looking at least, 40 mil? 50 mil? Yeah. Exactly. How much is that contract going to cost you over that 300k contract? What's that? 18 mil a year for 3 years. So that's okay. I'm not great at maths on the head, but
18 mil for 3 years.
It's like 54 years or something.
Mil.
Yeah. So 54 mil. That's going to, in wages and stuff, that's going to cost you at least that much to replace him. The thing is, if you can retain him at least, then try and build with some younger players around him. So you future-proof the team, and then springboard to at least use them to try and get you back in the Champions League. I think that's your best bet.
Well, I mean, look, we're linked with Depay earlier today, and Depay is he's never gonna replicate the goal scorer in that. And I don't know where you guys would see him fitting in. Is he a Lacazette replacement, or is he gonna come from? Or is he gonna play in the Aubameyang position out wide? But what you're gonna to replace Aubameyang, you're probably going to have to buy 2 players, right? Because you're going to need to fill the goal gap by buying 2 players who can score goals.
Yeah,
you're going to find one person. I don't think we're going to sign a player who's going to come in and slap 30 goals a season. I think you're going to have to do it with 2 players.
Yeah,
arguably that's going to cost more than 54 million.
Of course.
So, like Depay, they're talking maybe 25. So you get Depay. Does he play up front? Does he play left wing? I don't know. Maybe he plays with Aubameyang. I don't know. Because Arteta said after the game that I can't remember what the quotes were, but something along the lines of Aubameyang wants to stay. Seun, did you read anything into those comments?
Yeah, he seemed quite positive, and obviously he was positive about Saka, and thankfully we've got him to sign now as well. It's interesting. I think Aubameyang's probably waiting to see how we end the season. Irrespective of that, I probably take a different approach to you and Leroy. I get totally where you guys are coming from in terms of the replacement of the goal production. I kind of see it as well. We're going through a rebuilding process anyway, and for me, I'm very keen on rebuilding the whole midfield. I think that's Arsenal's biggest area of priority if we're just looking to improve. Like, do you know what I mean? So I come from the standpoint of we had defenders like Senderos, Giroud, Clichy, and Boué, who were all horrific themselves, but obviously that they survived a lot because we had a midfield that could sustain and retain pressure high up the pitch as well. So we allowed them, and so my kind of thinking is if we can get back to a team that's creating a high volume of chances, we can get to a point where maybe anybody can score. And I know obviously it's a risk, but I think there's risks either way. So I think there's a risk in giving Oba 300k, even though he's a guaranteed goal scorer, but we don't know how long he's going to sustain that for. So it just depends where you'd like to put your money. And for me, I would like to spend the bulk of our money this summer in terms of getting the right technically and athletically proficient midfielders that can help to elevate Arsenal back up. So yeah, starting with Partey and then moving towards some better technicians as well.
See, while I hear that, my thing is the goal scorers make any team. Any team is made by your attack. Like, you can have the best midfielders in the world. If you don't have the attackers, it's not going to work. The attackers are the most important part of the team. And if you've got a striker who can score you that,
right?
Exactly. If you have a striker that can score you that many goals, it's worth spending the money on. So, like, all I think about is, do you remember back in the day that Napoli team that had Cavani, Lavezzi, and Hamsik?
Yeah.
All them three up front.
Yeah.
The rest of their team, I mean, it proves over time, but originally that team was trash. But that front three just banged, and it just carried them very, very far. So I feel like we need to make sure that we're not going to be able to, we have fallen so much in terms of our clout, we're not going to be able to attract the type of forward that's going to score us goals or going to keep us there in and around the top four. So the fact that we have one who's arguably one of the best goal scorers in the league, or at least top three, letting him go if he's willing to stay, I feel like is a misstep.
I hear you, and it is a big risk. I'm even admitting it's a risk, especially when you've got someone consistently bags 30 goals year in, year out as well. So, but yeah, I think in football sometimes you've just got to move on. Like how I've always been is that there's always somebody new, and obviously it would be folly to bank on some of the young strikers to come good, because they might not, and it might be a complete risk. So. But that's kind of the avenue I would seek to take on this going forward personally. So I would. Sorry. No,
the
let me
risk
just
one
finish.
way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Carry on.
No. I was just going to say the only way I would do it, the other deal, is if we could get Ozil off the wage bill, and then I would commit the wages to Aubameyang. But if we can't do that, then I wouldn't do it personally.
Get on that GoFundMe then, because
the risk one way though. All right, so you got to think of the balance of risks, right? So let's say we give Oba the money. He scores. You know he's going to score well for like half a season, one season, then he flops for 2 seasons, right? Okay, we've got that money on our wage bill, and it hamstrings us from then progressing further. The risk the other way, we lose Aubameyang. We buy someone who's nowhere near as good, who's not going to be able to score goals. I don't really trust him to build the midfield, regardless, in one season. And then we fall off a cliff and we really fall into mid-table mediocrity. And we've got no other pieces that are going to attract other people to play with. So I feel like on the balance of risks, that's the worst option. But I
feel like
understand
people would want to come and play with Aubameyang as well.
Exactly.
I feel like he's built that kind of superstardom now where, you know, people know that he is a certified shooter. They want to be on Aubameyang's side. You know, he's that level of influence for us now. I guess the other thing to think about is is he going to fall off a cliff in a year's time?
I don't think so.
I think that's worst case scenario, personally.
It is worst case, yeah.
Because his game isn't as reliant on pace as we thought it'd be. He's still quite explosive, like getting away from markers and stuff like that. But very rarely is he getting chances where it's, you know, he's running onto things in behind where he has to rely on like electric pace. Yeah. A lot of his goals are just, I know obviously his goal today was, you know, he shut down the goalkeeper, good work rate, and obviously he's a quick lad. But I don't really see Aubameyang falling off a cliff in a year's time. The only thing would be, but he's remained very, I mean, he plays practically every game for us, right? Like even now during this thing, like he's playing every game. You know, he's been a model professional. He's got contract issues, but he's giving 100% every game. Passion merchant me, yeah, obviously I enjoy all that shit. But like that kind of attitude and that mentality, I can see him going for another 2 or 3 years. I think it could be money well spent. I really do.
I agree.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't disagree with the approach. I'm just thinking if we have finite resources, just how we're going to allocate them and how better to use them. So that would be sort of my slight disagreement on that. But yeah, I mean, if he stays, happy days in it. Do you know what I mean? So, but I'm just trying to see where we can get marginal gains elsewhere in the squad as well. So yeah.
The fourth goal, debut from Cedric. Finally, we got to see him. It's only taken 7 months. He's come on and he's put one in the bottom corner. He's someone I wanted to start today because, I mean, we've been very vocal for a long time about fucking Bellerin. And, you know, he was one of 2 negatives for me today. Seun, you'll probably know who the other one is. But he was one of 2 negatives for me today. And I think we need to phase that lad out of the team ASAP. And if he doesn't want to go with Maitland now, then he has to go with Cedric, because I know it wasn't much to go off today, but he's obviously he's put one in there. We didn't see anything from him today. But I found to believe that he isn't better than what Bellerin is offering up right now. Like, he must be. He absolutely must be.
Yeah, so I don't think I mean, I totally agree in terms of we need to start getting Bellerin out of here. It was frustrating me so much. Leroy mentioned earlier, like, a lot of the approach play in the first half was so good because obviously Nelson was tucked in. Like, literally Bellerin had the freedom of the right flank in the first half, and even at points in the second half, and you're like, the final ball was just awful every single time, and he was labouring to get there, and I'm like, come on, like, because Cedric, I don't think is a massively explosive player, but what he is, he's technically quite secure. He looks a lot better on the ball. Like, he's not treating the ball like a hot potato like Bellerin does. So yeah, I'm ready to start seeing Cedric. I mean, in an ideal world, I'd like Hazley, Maitland-Niles to be serious in that position, but we all know that's quite unlikely. So yeah, for me, Cedric to get the nod when he's fully fit, obviously.
And also, Bellerin started today.
No, Ainsley started the other day, so it's maybe.
Bellerin played like 4 to 5 games. Like, the rotation thing, I didn't really get it. Maitland-Niles only played 1 game.
Maitland-Niles, I think there was these issues that saying he didn't really want to play at right back, and then he started playing a few games in midfield.
He ain't gonna play in midfield though.
He's not.
Is that what it is? He's not gonna play.
Yeah, but he's not happy. So we really only have one fit right back until Cedric's really up and raring to go.
Yeah, I took his inclusion at right back the other day as a kind of admission that, okay, this is where my future lies.
Nah, not nonsense, man.
No?
He's just employed Sterling's ex-agent, bro. He's looking to go.
It's a shame, man, because like I said, because of the way Bellerin is going at the moment, like, this is the perfect opportunity. I mean, we've said it before, but because it's interesting now, I definitely think Bellerin is one of those guys we should look to shift in the summer. I don't know how much you guys think we could get for him, but he needs to be out.
We're seeing PSG linked, right? If we release them for 20 mil,
yeah.
I would take it in a heartbeat. To be fair, I would take practically anything PSG throw at us, because Bellerin is another one. He's on big wages. What's he? 100k minimum.
Is he on that?
No idea.
He must be. Surely he signed a contract extension recently, didn't he, Bellerin? Like in 2018, maybe. He must be picking up. Like,
yeah, I mean, I would shift him on 25. He's got good age. He's probably still got stock in the continent. He could probably guard Rod and have a decent career still, in it. Do you know what I mean?
So, in Paris Fashion Week every year.
Yeah, and same with Milan as well. Hopefully, Gazidis
110 a week apparently.
What, Bellerin?
Yeah, 110.
Oh, you need to get rid of him, bro.
Yeah,
100%.
It's nuts that we could have, like, if Bellerin isn't our first choice right back, Kolasinac isn't our first choice left back, and we're spending 250k a week on those two alone. It's
blooming. Oh, word, that's terrible.
It's insane, and they're probably not even our best fullbacks, and it's fullback as well. By the way, it's not like it's centre mid or I know we rely on our fullbacks, and if you want to give Kieran Tierney 100k a week, then I'm absolutely fine with it because he looks quality. But Bellerin and Kolasinac, no, gotta go, man, because that is insanity, absolutely insanity. But yeah, if PSG want to, do up Paris Fashion Week with Bellerin and do them kind of marketing campaigns, then I'm happy for him to go. He's been a good servant for us. So
he has, but I don't see any club being silly enough to pay a significant fee for Bellerin, especially in the COVID pandemic. I just don't see it happening.
How much do you think we can get?
15, 20 mil.
That's calm. I mean, we didn't pay anything for him, so it's profit anyway.
We didn't pay anything. I think 15, 20 mil is calm. Like,
in this current climate, obviously, if this was before COVID, you'd probably get a lot more. But at the moment, I just don't see who really needs a right back as well. I mean, the only thing I can see, but even though he's Catalan, is obviously Real Madrid got rid of Archaf. They'll need Hakimi. They'll need a backup. But PSG just got rid of Meunier.
Yeah, I wouldn't see him going to Madrid because of, like you said, the Barcelona links in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, PSG would make. I just feel like Milan, because Gazidis is the sort of player it's sort of man who will just spunk silly money on like players who are finished. So That could be
Yeah,
another
he's got a
link.
reputation of doing that, ain't he? He's got a reputation of doing that. What else? What
yeah.
else there to talk about today? So obviously we've gone through the goals. Oh yeah. So sorry. The other disappointment that I was going to talk about was I felt Nelson was pretty poor today. You might disagree with me, Sean, but I feel like these games are, especially games like today, where we have so much of the ball, everything's going our way. We were sustaining attacks one after another. These are the sort of games where you would want Nelson to step up to the plate and show what he's about. And maybe he did, and that's all he's got at this level.
Maybe. I didn't think he was bad. I thought he was tidy. He wasn't like overly exciting. I totally take that as well. But I don't really know if that was his role in the team to be there. Maybe it wasn't, and maybe I'm just being a bit too defensive, and maybe it wasn't great. I mean, I thought Lacazette was horrendous. That's who we're not focusing on.
Expect it from Lacazette, innit?
Well, Lacazette cost 50 M's. So we're talking about people that have got to go, because he's like 50 M's, nearly 200 bags a week, and he doesn't deliver a single thing. Nketiah comes on every game and looks a million times better than him. So yeah. I think that's telling.
How much are we going to get for Lacazette? Wow.
Well, I don't know. There still seems to be a market for him, which I'm surprised about.
The thing is, every game he's playing, his stock is diminishing.
Every game. Because every game, he looks worse every game.
Yeah.
This is the thing about playing him. Like, you know when the old thing of like, play a player into form. It's gone past that for Lacazette now, isn't it? It's like we're playing him to the extent where we may even be, putting teams off signing him. Like, the more teams are looking at him, they're like, fucking hell, is he really done? And maybe Arteta's onto something now with just sort of like playing Nketiah, phase Lacazette out and just try and hold his value that way if possible. I don't know.
Maybe.
I
reckon he'll end up at like Sevilla or something, man.
What's your thoughts on Nelson, Leroy?
He was poor, with Nelson, so on the left side we had Aubameyang, who was playing the inside forward. We had Lacazette up top. So Nelson's supposed to be the one who creates isolation and 1v1 situations and beats his man. Now, there were a good few times he stood up his man against Norwich and he just didn't do anything. He was not aggressive. He was just walking around, but he just felt there was no intensity to his game. And I think you said something on the Discord, and it's perfectly right. He played it like he's playing an under-21 game or a youth team game. Just no intensity whatsoever. And you'd expect the youth players to really have it. Like, when Eddie comes on, he makes some silly decisions sometimes, but you can see his enthusiasm and he's got the bit in his teeth. Mm-hmm. I just don't see that from Nelson at all. And if you're not going to do that and you're not going to make the difference really in any single way, shape or form, I just don't see the point of having you on the pitch. It's just like you're carrying a spare man, especially in an attacking position where you've got to do something. So I just think if you compare him to Saka, and Saka's probably he's got a lot more of a basic game, I should say, even though he does the basics a lot better and more correctly, but he doesn't have any frills or bells and whistles to his game. It's just night and day between the two.
Mm. Yeah, and like Nelson has been that kind of like poster boy of youth football. He's had that reputation. Saka, I know Saka is obviously a highly rated youngster. He has to be coming through the academy at Arsenal, but he never really had that reputation of Nelson. And it's just interesting to see how they both adapted to senior football. Is there something in it to say that maybe Nelson's reputation as a youngster is that hampering him in first team football? Does he feel like maybe he's had it his own way pretty much his whole career? Is there something to say about that? Maybe.
Who knows? But he clearly doesn't have the same kind of mentality that a lot of the other young kids have. So, and I mean, I've heard from people that he does think he's big time. So who knows?
Really?
Yeah.
Which and that wouldn't surprise me. If you know, if you've been the hottest thing in England since at 14 years old or whatever. Oh my god, I think that's a pen. No. Oh, yeah. If you've been like the hottest young prospect in England since you were like 14 years old.
Yeah.
I guess it comes with the territory, doesn't it? Was there anything else you guys want to talk about the game? I thought Emi Martinez was really good again.
He's been solid for us.
Yeah, he's. I was a bit worried at first when he came in, but he was good on the weekend.
I think like outfield players though, sometimes goalkeepers just need a run of games as well. Like and I was saying to Leo earlier, I just think this run with Leno being injured, it will just suit him. Like, do you know what I mean? Just to know he's being picked for like every single 3 days. Like, and he's been decent. He's been assured in his handling. His kicking is unreal. His distribution is fantastic. So no, I think he's been good, and it's good to know that if he comes through this period unscathed, that we've got a solid number 2 behind us, and he's also homegrown, in it. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
we've got a lot of areas we need to address. So that will just be one we can tick off and just be like, do you know what? Area's fine, in it.
Solid.
How long has he got left on his contract?
Oh, I checked this the other day. So I think it's till 2023, so he's got ages.
Oh, okay, so he's still got he's calm.
I thought his contract was running down, but it wasn't, because there was a lot of talk about bringing Fraser Forster in as like the backup goalkeeper, but I don't know. I don't know if Martinez was maybe making moves to go.
I do remember seeing at the start of the season something about, I can't remember, Emery said something about after his loan, they said they'll just try and promise Martinez more minutes and stuff. So so obviously he's hung about because he's played for Argentina a couple of times, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And he's not even. Emi Martinez. Yeah, he's played for Argentina a couple of times, and he's not even.
Argentina must be well.
Well, I mean, the other goalkeeper is Sergio Romero, isn't it? So so yeah. So he's done all right, man. He's done all right. I'm happy for him, innit? Do you know what I mean? Because he's been at Arsenal. He's Arsenal's longest serving player.
Yeah, that's crazy. For time. He's gonna have a testimonial soon.
And he's still in goalkeeping terms, young, innit? So
25, 26.
Yeah, 25, 26. So he's got time on his hands, man. So yeah, big him up.
Yeah, obviously Kieran Tierney was great, solid again. Like I really love that kid, man. I really love him. Like he's just everything to me. He's I know this is coming across as really Brexit, but you know,
he's a proper Brexit player.
I don't give a shit, man. I made a comment. I said on the Discord, I thought, like, even though we were wearing short sleeves today, it's like he plays football with his sleeves rolled up still, even though he's wearing short sleeves. It's like, you know what I mean? It's just, you know, he's a good lad. Just wants to play his football, go home, get that solid 7 out of 10 on under his belt, and then he just does everything so well.
Put his feet up with the digestives and a cuppa.
Yeah, the iron brew on deck after the game. That is a great signing, and you know we can criticize the board for everything, but I think that's going to be a stellar signing for us in years to come.
Yeah, I reckon we'll end up selling.
Probably. I mean, yeah. I mean, he's 23, so
yeah,
potentially we could have him as our starting left back for the best part of the next decade. But yeah, you're right. If we continue in mid-table, I'm sure bigger teams, or better teams, the teams in a better position us will be really looking at him, because he is like the complete kind of fullback, isn't he? Great going forward, very solid defensively, doesn't do anything wrong.
Yep, definitely.
Other positives there, I guess Xhaka was quite good again. But we mentioned him and Ceballos. Ceballos did his thing, a couple nice games, but a couple nice moves, but obviously the perfect game for him. Let me move on to some listeners' questions then before we wrap this up. Then we got quite a lot from our Discord, so I'll prioritize the Discord stuff since they're the where are we? Right, okay. Ivan Allo asked, what would your starting lineup be for the game against Wolves on the weekend? So I'll start with you, Sean.
I think he will match up like how he did with Sheffield United. I think we'll continue with the 3 at the back again. I think he'll try and match up Wolves. I would like to see Ainsley back in instead of Bellerin. Would keep Tierney left wing back. Actually, wait. Now I've said that, it'll be interesting if he does keep the 3, because then where will Saka play? Because Saka was completely rested today, so I'm assuming he'll come back in. Pepe will come back in. Oba will play. He likes the way Eddie presses from the front. So I'm not sure how he plans to incorporate all of them. Maybe he might.
Tierney
Maybe
centre back, Saka left wing.
yeah. I was thinking he might put Tierney left centre back and he might put Saka left wing back. And then I really hope, it's a shame because obviously Torreira's still not fit. So I'm really hoping that he's back soon because he would be great for these sort of games as well. So yeah, he's probably going to go Xhaka Ceballos again. Or he might go Xhaka Willock. Willock a bit more physical. So he might go with that. And then Oba, Pepe, and then Ketia up top, I'm assuming. So yeah.
Yeah. I think the only question mark for me would be in the middle, as you said. Like, I don't know which way you'd go.
Well, because sorry, just to say, obviously Arteta was asked after the game about Guendouzi again, and he said nothing's changed.
Was he out of the squad today? Was he?
He was not in the squad again. So Jimenez will.
Yeah,
so I think
it's like the fourth time Guendouzi's been like exiled from Arsenal, and it's just like.
I think whatever it is, it seems pretty serious that the coach has just been like, yeah. And he's probably going to be the biggest casualty from a sales perspective this summer. The one we look to try and get as much money as possible as we can from, I reckon.
Yeah. Leroy, what about yourself? What team would you go against Wolves?
So the thing about Wolves is they're strong, they're fit, they're athletic, and they can really run. So my concerns would be, like I said, he's probably still going to go the back three, and I would, just to help protect the centre backs because that's going to be necessary. So I would go exactly the same back five that you guys are going. So David Luiz, Mustafi. Well, I'll go Kolasinac, Tierney, and then I'll bring in
Tierney, yeah.
Yeah, I'll bring in Ainsley Maitland-Niles as well. Kolasinac, obviously, he's got his flaws, but he's a physical guy, and I think that's going to be needed. Then I would actually go 5-3-2. So I would play the two up front of Eddie and Oba. And then I would bring in Ceballos and Xhaka because I think Ceballos is going to be very important for our creation. And even though I'm not his biggest fan, I would actually bring in Willock just for the legs.
You would not play Saka at all?
No, I wouldn't play Saka at all from the start. I wouldn't play Saka at all from the start. I'd probably bring him on at a later time, but I would try and make sure I go with a good, solid, compact midfield that's not going to get overrun. And I would go with the back five, and I would go with both Eddie and Aubameyang.
It's interesting because Wolves always do the back three. Sometimes they flip between the 3-4-3 and the 3-5-2. So sometimes they'll have the two like wide forwards either side of Jimenez, but sometimes they just play a front two of Jota and Jimenez as well. So it'll be interesting to see, like you said.
It's going to be a tough game.
It's hard. I really don't see us coming away from that because, as Leroy said, athletically they blow us out of the water. They're like we spoke about Sheffield United being like a watered down Wolves. Wolves are they're a much much better version, and they actually score a lot of goals, and they're solid, and they create a lot of chances as well in transition. Yeah. So we will need you'll probably. Do you know what? In fact, I pretty much agree with you right now. You probably need Kolasinac and Tierney up against Adama Traore, to be fair.
Yep.
Wow, first time just scored.
Because you can't have Tierney and Saka down that side against him.
It's true. I think they'll get destroyed. I think you need Kolasinac and Tierney, both of them.
Yep. Okay. Let me get another question. Okay. What do you think? This is from Wavy. He asked, "Where do you think Saka will play the majority of his football for Arsenal in the future?" So obviously, big news today. Saka signed a contract, which is huge news for us because I think we mentioned before that arguably alongside Aubameyang, some might even say the extension of Saka is even more important than the Aubameyang extension. So it's very important that he signed. Where do you guys see Saka playing the majority of his Arsenal career? I think it's a tough one, right? Because there's three positions that he stakes a very valid claim for. But because Tierney's obviously our settled left back, I don't really see that position being his main utilisation. Where do you guys see him? Is he going to be in the wider role or centrally?
Thing for me about Saka is I like Saka as a talent. I think he's got so many good qualities. I just feel he's not quite up to it to be at the top level in the front three. I don't think he's got enough to
You're
his
still sticking
game.
with that, yeah?
Yeah, still sticking with that. I've said that from the beginning.
What do you think it would need to happen for you to change your mind on that?
He'd have to. So I've even said this before. I think for me to change my mind on that, he would have to develop physically to the point where he's still got his quite basic but good game, which is very good, but he develops like a Mane-like physique. So if he became sort of Mane physically over time, because he's still a very young boy and growing into himself, then all of a sudden that changes because he'd become very, very dangerous. But even though he's got like a little bit of explosiveness, I don't think he quite he's not devastating enough to be in that final third. That's where the left centre mid thing becomes very interesting, because a lot of his qualities would be very, very good in that position if he were to learn that position well. And I thought he can be an elite left back, but we've got Tierney there. He could be a very, very good left central midfielder or attacking midfielder, because he's got a lot. He's got the final ball. He's got the deftness of touch. He's got the awareness. He's got the intelligence. So he could do very well in that position. So if he's going to be at Arsenal, and if Arsenal are where we want them to be, I think it has to be at left centre mid. But if we are a mid-table team, he could definitely play at left wing for the remainder of his career for Arsenal.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree. I mean, I've said a lot of stuff about Saka and I've been wrong every time, so I'm inclined to just to keep shut, to be honest. I would. So while I agree, like I don't think he has as much cuteness to his game to be a top class winger. I would like to see him tried as the guy who just holds the whip as well, and just stands up his marker 1v1 as well. We've seen it at left back when he's just stood up his marker a few times and he's gone at them and he's either beat them or he's just sort of taken that one instep and crossed it as well. So I wouldn't mind seeing him tried there. I would, just because. I think he deserves a chance. Let's see how he does it. Because I didn't.
Proven wrong.
Yeah, I would love to be proven wrong because I was wrong about him anyway. So I could be proven more wrong. And but yeah, the left centre mid, as Leroy said, is interesting because he has a lot of Di Maria-like qualities from there as well. So and that was the obvious comparison that was made recently when he did play there as well. Decision making in the final third. As he sort of starts inwards, but he dribbles outwards. So obviously that allowed Aubameyang to come inside and take up more central positions as well. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. Arteta was asked today, where does he see Saka playing? He said, I have an idea, but he said over the next year I will experiment, and then I will probably settle down after a year. So he's got in his mind where he sees Saka playing. I'd love to know where, but he said he's probably gonna. He said it's good for Saka to be versatile for now.
VSEAUX, I don't know what that name is, but he asked, are y'all having Cantwell? I heard he grew up as a Gooner. We discussed it a bit on the Discord. Me and Leroy discussed it on the Discord earlier. Seun, you're a fan of Cantwell, right?
Yeah, I think Cantwell's a nice player, but I don't think he's the level, like, do you know what I mean? So I think he's a very nice, tidy player, but I do not think he's Arsenal level, and I don't even see him growing to Arsenal level. So yeah, I'm very keen to get more technicians in, and he's quite decent technically, but with a decent level of athleticism. Like I said, if you compare him to Grealish, it's not, in my opinion, it's just night and day. Grealish carries a lot more better ball carrying qualities over a longer distance, and athletically he's a lot more suited to, in my opinion, to what we would need. So yeah.
Okay. Leroy, you're similar, right?
Yeah, I think Cantwell, it's technically of the level, but athletically he's not there. And I don't think he's going to get that. And like I said, modern football's changing. 10 years ago in the Riquelme era, I think, you bring Cantwell in. But now I just feel like, I know he even posted some stuff about his career. He's got a lot of, he's been too slow, too small, but I just think, a bit too slow and a bit too small, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think today was like an opportunity for him to, not to say that this game was, his one and only audition. We all know Cantwell is a top player. I think a good player. I think me and Leroy, we saw him the first day of the Premier League, and we were like, right, who's this, fucking country bumpkin playing for Norwich? He looks quality. So But yeah, just there's something about like he just looks bare lightweight and quite easy to play against. Very nice, though. Very nice, like technically and smooth. He's a smooth operator. But to go to the next level, I wouldn't mind him in the squad as someone just but I don't know. What does he really do? Maybe a bit similar to Ceballos. I can't believe I'm saying that, but
and also, do you want to pay over 30 million for a squad
I
player?
don't.
You're kind of like, no. Do you know what I mean?
What about Max Aarons then?
Again, a little bit too small, even though I like him. But to be honest, the thing is, it really depends on the makeup of your team. So if we've got on that right side, we've got Saliba, and if we get another centre back that's relatively good in the air, you could have it. But Arsenal are very vulnerable in the air. So for us, I'd like someone who's just a bit more certified. Like
if Bellerin goes and Maitland-Niles doesn't want to stick around, then I guess we have to be in the market for a right back, don't we?
Of course we do. But I feel like as well, the amount that Max Aarons would cost is just not really worth it. We don't really right back is a position you shouldn't really be spending that much money.
No,
fullback you shouldn't be spending that much money on it unless you've got like a Tierney who is clear as day. 1, British homegrown. 2, he's going to be a very good player, and 3, you're going to have lots of upside. I don't see a spend. Why? Because the fees quoted for Aaron's 30-40 mil, just ridiculous. We shouldn't really.
They're not going to get that though. Who's going to?
Well, it's cheap, but you do know, Spurs had a 30 million bid accepted for him last summer, innit? But he chose to stay at Norwich, just because he wanted to have a season in the Prem with Norwich. So it'd be interesting.
Back in from now, but Spurs got a right back.
Oria, so they probably will.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
And the thing is, think about it. Aaron Wan-Bissaka went for 55 mil.
It's true.
What's his name? Carl Walker went for 50 odd mil.
And
I don't think he's as good as those two.
Either way, Aaron Wan-Bissaka. The thing is, he's got different qualities. But
for an attacking side, Wan-Bissaka's not offering enough down forward, innit? So Aaron's probably offers more than him going forward, innit? So so he probably
he does, but he's not as good. Like what Aaron Wan-Bissaka does have is that
elite
defensive work. Where, he's got a world class area of his game. I'm not sure Max Aaron, but I guess it goes to that age old debate of like, what do you want from your fullbacks, right? Is like would you rather a fullback who is 7 out of 10 going forward and 4 out of 10 at the back, or 8 out of 10 at the back, but 3 out of 10 going forward? It's that kind of debate, right? And what kind of team you're building. Let's have a look. That guy _Bells, do you think we need to cash in on Reece Nelson or be more patient?
Cash in.
Yeah, I agree.
Quids in.
Private drinks.
Yeah.
Sean, I'm guessing you're going to be more going down the patient route.
Boy, I have a bet with Leroy, so I have.
You got no.
I have to be more patient.
Wait, what do you guys bet?
Our bet is that I said to Leroy, Reece Nelson will be at a top 6 club in England or equivalent by 2022, and Leroy said no. So I've got 2 years.
Arsenal? Does that include Arsenal?
Yeah.
So top 6 club, including us.
Yeah, top 6
say
club.
He's at Arsenal and he's just not playing. What happens then?
I wouldn't have bet because Leroy said he'll get sold by then.
I said it was within 3 years of when 3 years, and we've done that bet at the beginning of this season.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've done a bet.
So it was 2019. So 2000. This season, next season, season after.
It's conceivable that he'll be in the squad, just not playing any. He'll be like 25 years old, still playing under 23.
I'll take it.
That's a slimy bet still, but yeah.
I'll take it.
I think we need to cash in, and I think we'll sell him at some point.
Okay. H. Summers says, take logistics out of the question. In 10 years' time, would you prefer to stick with a team with a similar quality as it is now, or focus solely on youth with no transfers incoming, with the likes of a 28-year-old Saka and Ketia, Willock leading that charge, but occupy a lower mid-table stand in the league?
What?
Yeah.
Man, what kind of question is this, man?
I don't know why I read out that question. What? Hey, Summers, what are you talking about?
Oh, mate.
Next question.
He says, I feel no attachments to this team apart from the youth prospects. I mean, I bet you would feel attachments to the team if we brought some world-class players and they actually started performing at a world-class level.
I lie.
I think you have
Man
enough
basically
of a
just said,
talent
do you want us to be shit or do you want
with
us to
you-
try and be good?
with
I-
homegrown lads, with
Bro,
British lads.
Listen, as I want us to do as well as possible. If you players do well, that's great, bro. But listen, you know what? The ideal situation is that these men end up being squad players and we buy good players and get better, bro. Not big, bro.
Shocking question, H Summers. Let me do a couple more good ones before. Okay, Sam E _91. I mentioned it earlier. Memphis to pay yay or nay.
No.
Okay.
I'm
Leo, go on.
I'm not opposed to it. If like for the fee, like 18 million, that is what they said. I wouldn't say no to it. Do you know
Where
what I
would you
mean?
play him though?
Probably on the left, but he's also played up front for Leon.
Mm.
But so I think so. Here's my sticking point with Memphis. I think he's got a lot of quality. However, my doubts center around obviously he's coming back from an ACL. Whether he struggled with the intensity of the league when he was here first time. I mean, maybe he'll be more clued up second time round. So it's more around the intensity, whether he could adapt. And I don't know whether he'd be Arteta's cup of tea anyway. Do you know what I mean? Generally, I don't know if he would like. Do you know what I mean? Arteta's like he loves his discipline in it. Depay's a bit of a free spirit, so do you know what I mean? So I don't know if he'll fit in there. But if he was to come and he was willing to work hard and he was applying himself, I think he could make a difference because he's a good player, scores a lot of goals when he's fit, and he's got a bit of an X factor about him. But I totally get the question marks around him as well. So
Yep, go on.
I'm just wary about the wage as well with him. So I don't want to be paying him massive money.
Signing a player for any significant money in our situation where every pound needs to bang, who's just coming off an ACL, is absolutely ridiculous. That's end of story. That's literally all I've got to say on it. It's mismanagement. It's ridiculous.
So your objections are purely fitness related, or is there objections about?
No.
Ability?
If this was pre his ACL, even if it was a higher fee, I'll take him. No problem.
Okay. And where would you play him?
I'll play him on the left wing. Play him off the left. I think he'll do very well there. I think he could be quite versatile. Play up top, play on the right. Good player. Really like him. Fine. Off an ACL, ridiculous.
When did he come back from his ACL?
So I just saw just now as well. The ACL happened like back end of last year, but they said he's been fit for a couple months now. But obviously he's just getting back to full fitness. He played a training match today. They said he got 4 goals and 4 assists. I was screaming, bro. But yeah,
he's
so
got a good goal scoring record this season. Like,
he
has played
13
13 games, 9 goals in the league.
Yeah,
Is that out front or is that out wide?
He's played both. That's what I'm saying. So he's versatile. He can pretty much play. You could play him in any attacking position up front, and I think he'd do well.
Yeah, he's a good player. Like, if this was without the injury,
doing fucking hold up play on the wing, is he, and all that shit, man.
Yeah.
Don't want all that fucking crap.
But if it was without the injury, I would definitely take him. But until
you weren't a big fan of him though when he was at United, though,
because he was shit at United. He didn't play well.
But what makes you think that it'll be any different this time?
I think he's improved. I think he's got a lot better. And I think that United team, it's hard to judge people in that team because a lot of players who are probably pretty good are just terrible.
Anyway.
Yeah, I know. But it's but yeah, no, it's just until you prove the player's fit. Who buys a player for a significant fee when we've got no money? Or who's just coming back from an ACL? I just think that's mad.
Jesus, he's got 14 goals in 18 games this season. He is fucking slapped this season. Wow.
No, he's
like
done
I said,
well.
when he's fit, he's a good player, man. Like he is, and I think, as the Leroy said, he's matured. Like sometimes you got to take it. Like he was bare young when he first went to United, innit? Do you know what I mean? So, and also that Louis van Gaal team was bare still. So
straight
like
from Holland as well, was it?
Yeah, straight from Holland. They brought him in it. So sometimes like it doesn't work for some people straight away. Like, do you know what I mean? So. No, I think he would, like, he's 25, 26 now, isn't it?
26.
I think if he came back now, I think he'd do well. If obviously fitness permitting. And the thing is, he has a year left on his deal. So they're saying 18 to 20 mil for him. That's very cheap, you know what I mean? So that's why I said I would consider doing it. But at the same time, Leroy's point stands about the ACL. That's my big concern in it. So, yeah.
The only way I would do it is if you're structuring the deal in a way that protects yourself somehow. So you're structuring the wages in terms of a heavily incentivized contract, and then you're structuring the fee that you're paying to Leon again in an incentivized way in terms of like number of appearances, starts, all that type of stuff.
Okay.
Then I'd consider it.
So with ACLs, what is your biggest concern about the ACLs? Is like the lack of like the loss of athleticism? Is that
Yeah. So the thing is, with an ACL, right? Like, it depends on what you've done to it. Number one, so you can have either a partial tear or full tear, and it depends on if you've had and what the degree of reconstruction. So sometimes they use a bit of your hamstring, or sometimes they use an ACL from a cadaver, which is like a dead body, basically. Now, the big thing about it is not so much the repair, it's the rehab. So when you have an ACL, you can't basically flex at the knee, so you can't bend your knee at all. So muscle wasting occurs very, very quickly. You lose a considerable amount of muscle, and as a highly tuned athlete, it takes a hell of a long time to get that back. When you're a highly tuned athlete, your biomechanics are really important. So not just getting back to a level that's sort of reasonable in terms of strength, getting your balance back, your timing back, and all the biomechanical processes back in terms of your stride patterns and things like that. All these things take a long time. Now, these things are very finely tuned, and if it doesn't come back the same, or it doesn't come back in the right way, they can affect a player forever. Particularly a player like Depay, who is a relatively explosive player. So you have to have, I mean, it's going to take 9 months to a year for a player to really get from playing to get back to where you would want them to be. And that might not even be 100%. So one, you don't know what the outcome's going to be and how that player is going to adapt. And two, it's going to take a significant amount of time anyway. That's the risk you take with ACLs, and that's why I'm worried. So from now, you're looking at another year before you really see what Depay is going to be, and we don't know what that is. We don't know how that's going to affect him. And the thing is, as well as on that recovery period, you've got a hell of a lot of muscular injuries and other small things that are going to occur at the same time. So it's just a big, big risk. Like, look at Bellerin, for example.
Yeah, that's true. But what there are obviously some success stories coming back from ACL.
Oh yeah, right? No. The thing is, there are definitely some success stories, 100%. But you don't know how it's going to turn out.
It's a lottery.
You don't know how that rehab process is going to go until you see it.
Right. 18. Now that I've seen those figures, and how many goals we've been clapping for Leon, I'm thinking, ooh, like 15 million.
It is very cheap. That's what I said. It is very cheap for someone who's got a year left in it. So. Boy, but it's fair.
I definitely wouldn't be signing him as an Aubameyang replacement, though, to play up front.
No,
not. Because that's just balmy. But if you can get him as as an additional player, a front three of Depay, Aubameyang, and Pepe. Right, actually, it sounds okay, you know.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
No.
Nah, it sounds very Lele.
Pepe guy's a bit balmy, isn't he?
Yeah, no, it sounds very Lele, man. I'll tell you what, though, they'll make a brilliant track together.
Do you know what? I can't even lie.
Music video.
Bro, no. Do you know what? I can't even lie. After I saw the link today, I clicked YouTube to do the obligatory search. The first 6 searches on YouTube of Depay were rap tunes. They're all like bare freestyles. Bare freestyles have been rapping on YouTube. I said, bro, I had to go through it was like the 10th video that there was a compilation video of him. I said, bro, this is what you've been on. I said, this guy. This guy.
Is he still dating Laurie Harvey?
He wishes.
Nah, she lodged him.
You're a future, bro.
I would sign him just so she could come to games.
Bro.
No,
I'll definitely be renewing my season. Come on, Arsenal, maybe. On that note,
she might get back with him still because she obviously lodged him because he went to Leon and went to some bummy league, innit?
Yeah, if he comes back to England, you might see a stroll through still.
Yeah.
All right, lads, let's call it a day there then. We'll be back. Who we got? We got Wolves on the weekend. We'll probably do like a Discord live thing so you can tune into that. Obviously, hashtag it, Touchline Fracas. Follow us on Touchy Gooners. I hope you've enjoyed the John Cross interview, and we will be back next week. Cheers, lads.
Cool.
When I spit bars in a rave, man, I go hard like Santan.